There is one person who's performed before 1 billion people, surpassed only by the Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, and Willie Nelson. He's never swung a bat or got a base hit. He's never scored a goal. He's never sunk a basket, and he's never been in any box score. Yet, he is one of the most recognizable features there ever was in the 70s and 80s. Most people don't get to be or have the notoriety of being called by one name. Frank Sinatra was Frank. Elvis Presley was Elvis. George Steinbrenner was George. Carrie Underwood is Carrie. Tiger Woods was Tiger. But this character, if you haven't guessed it by now, is in that same category. I'm referring to the chicken. The chicken was hatched in 1974 by a San Diego radio station who put a guy in a chicken costume, and he was immediately successful with his antics, his timing, and he just had it. And it wasn't long after that the San Diego Charger football team hired him to perform during the Charger football games. And of course, the Padre baseball team followed suit. Well, the chicken gained an awful lot of notoriety really quickly, and he took his act on the road to several minor league baseball parks. And that's how I heard about him. So I knew that the El Paso Diablos of the AA Texas League had him on more than one occasion. So I called up the general manager, Jim Paul, and asked him about it and said, "Tell me about the chicken." And all he said to me was, "Just book him, Bob. You won't be sorry." So I came back, did a little bit of research, found out who the chicken was and where he'd performed, and made a phone call to the chicken's office and found out that the chicken, yes, indeed, was available and was interested in coming to Denver. And the date of Friday, August 2nd, 1980 was available, and the price was $4,000. So now I know what I need to present back to our management team. But that's the big problem, because the decision maker is none other than my father, Jim Burris, who we will affectionately call Papa Bear, JB, or Jim through the rest of this, because Jim Burris was a baseball traditionalist, a lover of the game. I mean, my God, he had traveled on trains with Babe Ruth. He had spent countless hours with Ty Cobb and talked endless hours of hitting with Rogers Hornsby and Ted Williams. He was best friends with Pee Wee Reese and a close confidant of Satchel Paige. So this guy was baseball true and true. Secondly, he was enamored with the geometry of the game. It's never changed. 90 feet between each base, 60 feet 6 inches between home plate and the pitcher's mound. So Jim was one of those people who was not into promotion. Sure, he liked the traditional ladies' days and the double headers where you got 2 games for the price of 1 and kids' days. But anytime I would bring a somewhat off-the-wall promotion to him, it was always this: "Bob, the baseball graveyard is full of minor league franchises who had a guy come in and give away free tickets to everybody and have a promotion every night, and he'd set an attendance record to get another job, and he'd leave the town decimated, a town knowing that they would never have to buy a ticket to see that again, and therefore ended up in, as I said, the baseball graveyard." Well, that was not going to happen in Denver, I assure you, not by my dad or not by me. But now I know that I've got this act that I think is going to be great. And I now have to propose this to Jim. And as I laid it out to him, he listened intently and then looked at me and he said, "How much does this chicken cost?" And I said, $4,000, to which Jim, I will never forget, raised his fist and slammed it on the desk, broke the glass that was on his desk, and said to me, "No one is going to pay and come out to watch some chicken." So fully rejected, as I kind of expected I'd be, I went back to my office and I began to think to myself, where or who would know about the chicken, A, B, would have enough moxie or leverage on my father to convince him that this was a good idea. This was not some cheap trick. Was it Peter Coors of the Coors Company? Was it Phil Anschutz, the billionaire? Or was it Mayor McNichols? No, none of those. But then it hit me. There was a controversial sports writer who still is in Denver by the name of Woodrow Page Jr. Now, Woody Page has been a phenomenal writer, phenomenal career, but Woody was one of the new age sports writers who nothing wasn't fit to print, basically. I mean, off the record, men off the record, but private lives, all those things, were fair game. And that wasn't the way my dad grew up as a sports writer. So I've got my father, who is a sports writer, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, how do I make this work? So I asked Paige, have you seen The Chicken? And he said, yeah, Bob, I've been on several road trips with the Broncos, and I've seen this guy perform, and he's phenomenal. You got to get him. He says, how much does a chicken cost? And I said, about $4,000 plus some minor expenses, to which Paige then asked me, he said, well, how many people do you actually draw on a normal night? And I said, well, maybe 4,000, 5,000 people to a Denver Bears game. And he said, well, you go back and tell your dad that I will put up the $4,000 if I can keep every dollar after that, the tickets we sell. So armed with that ammunition, I go back to the office. I lay out the proposal to my father, and Jim looks at me, and now we've got two things going. My great friend Jim Pearson taught me a long time ago that when it comes down to making a decision on sales, two things come into play: fear and its cousin, greed. So I give you that to give you this. I now know, and Jim now knows, that the sports writer, Woody Paige, knows about this opportunity. And if Jim doesn't do the opportunity and doesn't book the chicken, the fear is that Paige is going to write a story about what a missed opportunity the Bears just did. Secondly, now the greed part comes in, and Jim is thinking, do I really want this guy to make money off of us? And of course the answer to that was no. So he said, book the chicken. Now I got to tell you, this reminds me of the 2023 film, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, when Mrs. Maisel and her mother are in a Brooklyn deli, and they get word that the rabbi had accepted their invitation to have dinner with them. And they went out of the Brooklyn deli and they yelled at the highest level, we got the rabbi. Well, that's how I felt. We got the chicken. Folks, on August 2nd, 1980, for the paltry, or shall I say it's the poultry? That's too easy. The paltry fee of $4,000, the chicken performed in front of 24,542 people. And what a show he put on. And it was a huge success, but the jewel in the Cracker Jack box at the end of the night was when we were in the money counting room, and there were two bill counting machines going simultaneously, trying to count all the money that we had taken in from the concessions, the parking, the merchandise, and of course the box office. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jim Burris, and I saw him coyly side up to me and said, hey Bob, do you think we can get the chicken again? We did, and we booked the chicken 9 more times in the next 3 years, and every time he drew more than the time before. The chicken, one of the greatest acts of all time. So to quote Frank Sinatra, or should I borrow one of his theme songs, and also something that my daughter said to me recently, the best is yet to come. Hi, I'm Bob Burris, and thank you for watching the latest episode of the Ultimate Backstage Pass to Sports. It's been a wonderful journey for me, and I hope it will be for you. And if you'd be so kind to at least like, follow, subscribe, we'd be grateful. Thanks for watching.